Because if it's the surveyors who are valuing the property down, they are causing the property market to come down. And so tens of thousands of people, landlords, applied to their mortgage companies to get these rent holidays. For this reason, we felt that actually 2020 might see a dip in the market. Then COVID happened. Hello, it's Simon Zutshi here, and in this video, I'm going to give you a housing market update for what's happening in the UK property market in December 2020. There's a lot going on right now, so we've got lots to cover in this video. Just in case you don't know who I am, I've been investing in property for 25 years. I'm the founder of the Property Investors Network, the largest network of property meetings in the UK, and I'm the author of Property Magic, the Amazon property #1 bestseller with over 100,000 copies sold. Now, it's really important for you to keep up to date with what's happening in the housing market if you're thinking about investing in or selling property. Let's look at what's happened so far this year in 2020. Now, for the last 10 years, we have been in a real growth market in the UK. And whatever happens when you have a growing market, you have a boom, and at some point you have a bust. So I think a lot of people have been expecting that's going to happen. Now, at the beginning of 2020, I was talking about the number of landlords who are looking to retire and sell up early. These are people who've got property portfolios they might have had for 10, 15, 20 years even, and they've got to the point where they think, you know what, I might think about retiring in the next few years. Typically, when people have portfolios of property, they might give them on to their kids. Very often their kids have seen how hard their parents work and don't really want to have those portfolios. So very often retiring landlords actually sell the portfolio. They've had a massive growth in value. They sell them, they pay their capital gains tax, and they retire on a big pile of money. Sounds like a good idea to me. But in April 2017, the government brought in their new Section 24 tax laws, which meant that if you own property in your own name, which most people do as property investors, and if you have mortgages, which again, most people do, and if you're a higher rate taxpayer, it means you have to pay a lot more tax on your property income. So for that reason, some investors have moved their properties into a company structure, which is one of the reasons the government have done this. They want to control property within corporations. They're easier to tax, they're easier to legislate against. They don't want millions and millions of individual landlords. But that's another video. Anyway, so many people have done that. But some are saying, you know what? I don't want the cost or a hassle of doing that. I'm just going to retire early. So start to sell up their properties. And we know this because of our network of property meetings all over the country. In 2019 and the beginning of 2020, we saw long-term landlords come to those network meetings looking to sell up some of their properties because of Section 24 and these new tax changes. So that meant a lot more landlords bringing more property onto the market. For this reason, we felt that actually 2020 might see a dip in the market. Then COVID happened, and really in the UK, it kind of hit home at the beginning of March, and then later in March, we went into the very first lockdown. Now, what that meant for property prices in the UK was that for 12 weeks or so, nothing happened. What I mean by that is all of the lenders, the mortgage companies, stopped lending. Now, the reason that happened was because A, they were very nervous about the market and what was going to happen. This pandemic and lockdown had never really happened here in the UK before. But the main reason was actually they didn't have capacity to take on new work or even deal with existing cases. And that's because the government announced that there were going to be these rent holidays for tenants who are struggling to pay because of the pandemic, and there were going to be mortgage holidays for the landlords. So what that meant was if you were struggling to pay your mortgage, you could speak to a lender and get 3 months of mortgage holidays. Now, there was a real knee-jerk reaction. I think a lot of investors thought, well, I don't know what's going to happen. My tenants might struggle to pay. Maybe I should get this mortgage holiday just in case. And so tens of thousands of people, landlords, applied to their mortgage companies to get these rent holidays. Now, the problem was these mortgage companies just were not set up for this work. They were overwhelmed, and they had to take all their staff out of all the other departments and put them into a department just to deal with the people working for these mortgage holidays. So that's one of the reasons the lenders completely stopped. The other thing is all surveyors stopped. I had 3 remortgages and 1 purchase going through in March everything stopped. So all the valuations, those just didn't happen for about 10 weeks. And in fact, I had a valuation immediately after we came out of lockdown. And the surveyor put on this, it was for a big block of flats. So I've got 7 flats up in Halifax. And I was expecting the valuation to come at maybe 900, 850. It came in at 750. And they said, because of COVID, market might change. So actually, you know, the surveyor had already downvalued the property because of that. So surveyors are being cautious, lenders not lending, you know, mortgage brokers and estate agents, and this all went home, weren't working. So the whole market stopped. Now, normally in the springtime, at that time of year, there's normally a bit of a boom, but that couldn't happen. So when we came out of the lockdown, I think there was a real relief for a lot of people, and suddenly the market went crazy. You had all the people who were trying to get transactions through during the lockdown. All of those pent-up demand came through. You had a bit of a natural boom in the summer. Then you had things like the CBIL loans and bounce back loans. So there was lots of money sloshing around in the economy. That meant people had more money to buy property. And then also people who've got money in the bank are worried about what might be happening. I think, is it really safe to leave money in the bank? I had a number of people who are not really in property, they're fellow speakers, other people on other wealth creation strategies, contact me and say, Simon, I've got some money in the bank, I'm thinking about putting it into property, what do you think? I need somewhere safe to put it. So I think that's definitely stimulated the market and caused this mini boom. And I must admit, this mini boom has gone on longer than I expected. And then also we had the government who realized that market was going to fall. I mean, the Bank of England predicted a 16% drop in property prices due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing recession. So the government brought in things like the stamp duty holiday, where they said, actually, if you're buying a first-time property or you're moving from one to another home, no stamp duty on purchase up to 500,000 up until the end of March 2021. So this was a real stimulus, and certainly a lot of people thought, well, you know, if I don't have to pay stamp duty, it's a great time for me to go and buy property. So this stimulated the market. Let me tell you what's happening here in Birmingham, and actually it's different all over the country, obviously. But here in Birmingham, properties were going like hotcakes. Things were flying off the shelf. Things were going for more than the asking price. So the value kept on going up and up and up and up. And what happened was people were making crazy offers. Now, that's all very well if you can get a valuation at that crazy offer. But increasingly, what's happening right now, more and more properties are coming to the time where actually they've been sold at a price often higher than the asking price. Surveyors are going out and saying, this property is not worth this much, because surveyors are all being very cautious. Now, it's an interesting point when you think about the UK property market and valuation surveyors. What the surveyors think, the sentiment of people like the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, they're the people who do the valuations on behalf of all the banks. If they think the market's coming down, they are going to be very pessimistic and cautious with their valuations. So they are going to lower property at a lower value. But they don't realize, or maybe they do, but that's actually a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if it's the surveyors who are valuing the property down, they are causing the property market to come down. What this means is property sales are starting to fall through. Now, in the UK property market, we see 1 in 3 sales fall through naturally. I think we're going to see an increase in sales falling through. So that's going to cause properties that are technically sold coming back onto the market, more and more properties coming on, and I've seen certainly in my area, more properties coming on and not enough buyers. I've heard some other property trainers talk about there's a real shortage of property. There was, but not now. Things are starting to change, and I think we're going to start to see the market to tip and start to come down. Now, I think that the stamp duty extension, the holiday until March 2020, we will see a whole load of transactions that people are trying to get through early March. So that might keep the market going a bit. The government might decide to extend that beyond March 2021. And so what that means is that maybe it might save the market. Otherwise, I think we could see a real drop off in prices in April 2021. We also heard in the news very recently that actually the government is being prompted, Rishi, the Chancellor, is being prompted to maybe change the capital gains tax that investors have to pay. Now, what kind of effect is that going to have? Well, it depends what comes in the budget. Obviously, these are only suggestions and proposals at the moment. The media is making a real fuss about this. I don't know if it's actually going to happen. And I've said to a lot of my clients, look, don't worry and panic about something that could happen. Worry about things that are actually happening in the market. The reality is there's lots of property on the market that is not selling. There are sales falling through. I think we're going to see the property market dipping and starting to come down. When is that going to happen? Look, I just don't know when that's going to happen. Nobody knows when that's going to happen, but we think it's going to happen sometime soon. So what does that mean for you? Well, it's important to keep updated on what's happening. I suggest you subscribe to this YouTube channel so that whenever these videos come out, I'm going to give you the very latest what's happening in the market. But I also get ready for a property market crash in 2021. I think that's going to happen. So what does that mean? If you're an active investor right now and you've got equity in property, and you're thinking about releasing that equity to buy more property, I would get it done right now. There's no doubt in my mind that lenders in the UK are getting very nervous. We've seen some of the higher loan-to-value mortgages offers being pulled, and actually I think it's going to get difficult to borrow money going into 2021. So if you want to release money, I can't give you financial advice, but if you already plan to do that, you might want to get on with that and do that very soon. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to be watching the UK property market very closely because I'm getting ready for the property crash 2021. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen very soon, and it's going to be a great opportunity. That means there are going to be more sellers than there are buyers. There might be people who want to buy, but if they can't get the finance, they're going to really struggle to do that. So what that means is strategies such as vendor finance and purchase lease options and exchange and delay completion are going to be strategies that we're going to be able to use in the market in 2021. There'll be a lot more sellers open to those creative finance strategies because they need to sell their properties. So stay tuned to this channel. I'm going to keep you updated with what's going on. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to invest in property in 2021. If you like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Invest with knowledge, invest with skill.